Good evening, everyone. My name is Tommy too, and I'm the Junior Competition and Tournaments Manager at USA NorCal. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, and thank you for everything that you do to support and grow the sport. It's great to see so many tournament directors and officials here tonight. So first, I'll go over the agenda. So we'll do speaker introduction, followed by tournament recognitions, updates and reminders, entry fee payments, cancellation, and then we'll end with questions. All right, now that we've covered the agenda, I'd like to move into recognizing our Junior Tournament Organizer of the Year. This is the opportunity for us to highlight the tournament directors who have gone above and beyond in organizing outstanding tournaments for last year and this year, and for creating a positive experience for our players, family, and the tennis community. So these organizers who have hosted at least 3 junior tournaments in the year with a 95% or above average ratings of 20 or more customer reviews for 2024. Joanna, if you can go back. We had Matt Brunner from Rollingwood YMCA, Lucas Berger from YOLO Tennis Club, CTAL Cal Bay Area Foundation, Phil Cello International Tennis Academy, Stephen Gilliam from Bay Club, South San Francisco, and Calvin Thompson from Tri-Valley Tennis Academy. And then recently we recognized the Junior Tournament Organizer of the Year for 2025, and they are Ian Chadwell from La Madrona Athletic Club, Lucas Berger, YOLO Tennis Club, Katie Martin, Acer Tennis Academy, Phil Cello International Tennis Academy, Jason Thomas from Bay Club, South San Francisco, and Ogidi Obi from Alpine Hills Tennis and Swimming Club.
Adult tournaments had also received many awards. We have many outstanding tournament directors and tournaments, and we recognize slightly differently. We recognize based on the player feedback, and if anyone, the tournament directors or the organizations that receive the highest feedback from players with a large response rate also from players, those are recognized as most outstanding tournaments. The 2025 Tournament Director of the Year was Jess Evangelinian for hosting multiple very different tournaments, NTRP, Age Division, and Open tournaments. The 2025 most outstanding NTRP Tournament of the Year was Del Norte Adult Level 6. The most outstanding age group tournament of the year was Pacific Coast Senior Family Championships Level 2. The 2025 most outstanding open tournament of the year was hosted by Lafayette Tennis Club. The most outstanding one-day tournament of the year was hosted by Bay Area Wheelchair Tennis. And we had also most outstanding new tournament of the year, which was hosted by Broadstone Sports Club. And that was the Women's Day tournament. All of them received very, very high praises from players.
All right, next up, I'm going to cover some junior tournament updates, starting with entry fee. Next slide, Joanna. So this is the, as some of you may know, the maximum for junior tournaments entry fees will increase for all levels starting January 1st, 2026. Here's a table that outlines all the fees for all the levels, junior tournaments only for now. So when you're completing your Serve Tennis form, please keep in mind these are the new fees. The fees in parentheses are what you should put in the Serve Tennis form. This is what the players are paying. These fees include the admin fees that is charged by Serve Tennis when processing entries. For adults, only adult level 7 have maximum entry fees, and it is 50 for singles and 40 for doubles.
And any other level of tournament can you can set your own price for it.
Okay. Wildcards, just a quick reminder that if you're hosting level 7s or level 6 junior tournaments, wildcards may be rewarded by the tournament committee. So depending on your draw size, it determines the number of wildcards you can give out. So like one wildcard for 16 or fewer total players are selected for an age division. You can give out 2 wildcards when there are 17 to 32 players, and then 4 wildcards when you have 33 or more players. And this is for each division. So another one that I like to highlight, we recently updated our videotaping and photography. Some of you may have already been asked by parents or players or coaches before. So currently our policy now, our new policy is now at public facilities like parks and public schools, videotaping and photography for personal or non-commercial use. It's generally allowed by the law, but people can't be prohibited from recording, although you may choose to ask them politely if they can stop, but they can continue if they wish to. But if you're doing it at a public facility where you're leasing it and you are legally designated as a private event, then you can depending on how you work out with the facility, you may have your own rules. Okay.
So for adult tournaments and general reminders about regulations is one thing that to keep in mind when you have a level 7 and you are in the dual role for the tournament director and referee, you actually should be present on site, not like in any other tournament. Tournament directors may not be there. And just remember to follow all the regulations that actually are pertinent to a referee, and that includes entering suspension points if those are necessary. Remember all the tournament requirements at that time, because you don't have the referee that will remind you of them, that you need single sticks, score tenders, and water available for players, open bathrooms, and all that stuff. Remember also that if you need to cancel your tournament, you are allowed to, if for whatever reason you need to cancel before the tournament starts, you can reach out to us, to staff, and it will be decided on a case-by-case basis, but this is an option. Otherwise, when it comes to inclement weather, you may cancel tournaments at noon of the day of. For adults, one thing to keep in mind, if you started the tournament, you do have 30 days to finish if possible. So potentially, if you're hosting another tournament the weekend after or 2 weekends after, you may give the players the opportunity to finish those tournaments. And just wanted to remind tournament directors that level 4s and level 5s have specific requirements, which are to host in NTRP tournaments, especially host all the divisions that qualify for nationals, depending 18 plus, 40 plus, 55 plus. In 18 plus, it's 2-5 through 5-5. And 40 plus, 55 plus is 3-0 through 5-0, with the limited draw of 16 for singles. Level 4s also require a player gift. But if anyone has any additional questions about that, I'm happy to explain that offline. I wanted to say, since we're talking about best practices, I recently was sending out, and I know that everybody is receiving throughout the year, the player feedback. One thing that players praise consistently, especially adult players, is an opportunity to socialize. When you're running a tournament, have a place where they can hang out, especially adult players that are there often alone. They like to hang out with their friends. And this is what they bring up in the feedback all the time. And this is something that will make your tournament stand out. When they have the opportunity to socialize, when they have potentially something there's snacks and something to eat, even if it's for purchase. It is an option for them, so they don't have to leave the site. They often praise when it's well organized, runs smoothly, and on time. So when you're scheduling, and that's Vinod is going to talk about that later, um, make sure you give yourself a buffer between tournaments. Friendly staff. What I always advise to people is treat all the players as if they have never played a tournament before in their life, and they just don't know. So explain as they say, as to a 6-year-old. Good communication. Andrea will be talking more about that later. They praise quality balls, interesting awards. It doesn't have to be a medal. It doesn't have to be a trophy. It can be something very different. So this is something that I just wanted to share from player feedback as pointers to what can make a tournament stand out. We're now going into a part that is we're going into a part of the year that is there's going to be a lot of rain. There's going to be situations that there's going to be cancellations and refunds. I just want to talk in the beginning all about entry fees. When you start a tournament, and one thing that is important is to check if everybody has played. It's not automatic that everybody will be charged. One thing is, if you enter anyone manually, they will not be charged because their credit card is not on file. And the other thing is, sometimes a credit card will fail. So some payments will be failed. To check that, go into Surf Tennis Players tab, select the payment status, and then select unpaid. You will see all the players that have not paid but were required. If they're alternates, it will say not required. As soon as they are moved from alternates to selected, it will actually change to unpaid as well. Please don't let them play until they pay. This is one thing that is important. This will always be the safest way to guarantee that they actually pay for the tournament. In order for them to pay, you can request a payment. You can request a payment from all the players that you have unpaid. It's a little bit tricky because when you do that, you select the players, you click those 3 dots on top and click request payment, but you will have to enter the amount and the message, and it will be the same for all of them. So basically, in this case, you can select those that have the same amount to pay, and then select the other group potentially. You can also do that individually, player by player. The amount then will be pre-filled most of the time. You can still change it, but this is what you will send. So that way you click on the player, not the checkbox, but just click on the player, and there will be a box saying request payment. So the best way to collect payment is through this method. That way everything is taken care of, the transaction fee to Surf Tennis and the head tax to us, to the organization. If you don't do it through that, if you collect it through cash, Venmo, or whatever other reason, at the end of the year or sooner, we will be sending you an invoice to collect the head tax that is owed. To check if it has been paid, you can, number one, it will change to paid in the player tab, or you can go to the payments tab and you will see where it says request for payment, and it will say pending or completed. If they still don't pay, try to reach them to make sure that they have received it. The request, that they know why it's happening, that it wasn't processed actually. And then if they still don't pay, reach out to us, and there will be consequences for that player if they still don't pay. So as I said, we're going into the rainy season, and so we're going to be there's going to be cancellations. Hopefully not, but many things will happen, hopefully, probably throughout the season. So when tournament is canceled due to inclement weather. If you have already charged players, I know sometimes what might happen is we see an atmospheric river coming. We know the weekend will be done. These are the case by case basis that we might allow a tournament to be canceled earlier. Maybe not everybody has been charged yet. First of all, let NorCal know that you have canceled the tournament. For the first one, once a year, we would need a W-9 form from you within 30 days after cancellation, and we can then refund you the sanction fee and the head tax if the players have been already charged, and the sanction fee definitely. There are situations where you might have to refund the player the 100%, including the head tax, including the surf tennis fee. That is when, if there's an error in accepting, they shouldn't have been accepted, they were accepted, something happened, they were charged. If there's a failure to communicate a change in start time or an omitted time is added, but no match has been played in that situation, or if a player declines to play in an event at a different level, if done so by the deadline set by tournament committee. Basically, as soon as the completion of the tournament and no later than 30 days after the last day of the tournament, send us a report about those players that you had refunded 100%. So that means the head tax as well, and NorCal will reimburse you the head tax for that. If you don't submit the report, then we will not know that. So we will be absolved from reimbursing. When you have to, there are situations when you might not, well, you still should refund the player, but not necessarily the full amount. So failure to communicate a change in start time or omitted time is added if at least one match has been played. So the player managed to play one match, you can reimburse 50% of the entire registration fee. So what the player paid. A player who declines to play in an event at a different level, if done so after the deadline, you can refund the registration fee less the surf tennis transaction fee and head tax. If they withdraw for an approved concurrent tournament into another NorCal tournament, you will refund registration fee less the surf tennis transaction fee and head tax. And if a player withdraws to play in a concurrent USTA National Junior tournament, if done so before midnight on the Sunday prior to the start of tournament, again the registration fee less surf tennis transaction fee and head tax. So these three last situations are the times where you can actually do the refund through the system, which withholds automatically the surf tennis transaction fee and head tax. If you're canceling the tournament the day of due to inclement weather or you have charged already the players, we know how expensive it is and how much cost it comes up when you're preparing the tournament. So we obviously, everybody is in a bad situation at that time. So you can then also withhold an administrative fee. If you're canceling the entire tournament, the fees you see on the screen here are different depending on level. You can withhold basically when you're refunding player, you refund them the registration fee less the surf tennis transaction fee, less the head tax, less the administrative fee. And still let us know. We can also give you back the head tax anyway. So there's a little bit of money that can kind of reimburse you for the expenses that you covered already. So that's if a tournament is canceled entirely. If you're canceling just one event, it's the same thing, just the administrative fee is slightly less. And there are also, if you're canceling some some matches have been played, but the tournament has not been finished, and you know you're not going to be able to finish it. There is some refund that should be processed in level sevens. If only one match is played, a player is entitled to a 50% refund that is calculated after deducting from the total fee paid for the event, the head tax, and the serve tennis. So let's say you have $60 fee, head tax 3, that's 57, less the transaction fee, which is 3.5% plus 50 cents. There's an amount. From that amount, you will take half, and that you can refund if one match has been played. If at least 2 matches have been played, you do not need to refund at all. In junior doubles events, if one match is played, no refund is required. For level 3, 5, and 6, it's similar, just the refund is 25% of the entry fee. And for junior doubles events, if one match is played, no refund is required. How to refund? As I said, through the system right now, the only option is to refund the registration fee less the serve tennis transaction fee and head tax. There's no way to change that sum. There's no custom refunds. If you need to do a custom refund, whether it's 100%, a partial refund, or you're withholding the administrative fee, you will have to use other means like cash, check, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, and any other of those options. That's it from me.
Right. Well, next up is our next speaker is Andrea Norman. I'd like to introduce Andrea to everyone. She is our junior council chair of NorCal, and she also directs a lot of our NorCal tournaments as well as national tournaments. All right, Andrea.
Hey there, everybody. Thanks very much. I'm going to the next slide. You can go to the next slide as well. Tommy kind of gave you a heads up of what my experience. This is just a brief overview of what I'm going to go over. In terms of communication, kind of my general philosophy. I want to talk about your collaboration with your referee as well as your other officials. The tournament website, both the requirements and why having a robust website is important. Emails. And other communications during the tournament, and also mid-tournament communications. So go ahead and go on to the next one. So just overall, I want to talk a little bit about my philosophy. And this is kind of bigger picture. I feel that really the key to a good tournament is if you can nail these 3 things, most people are really going to appreciate what you're doing. And the first thing is communication. The second thing is having a really good schedule for your tournament and also making very agile changes to your schedule in the event of inclement weather. And lastly, kindness. Kindness goes a long way. And I would say that kindness plays into the communication that you're going to be doing. Because if you approach it in a way that is kind, is informative, you're not short with people, it's going to win you a lot of friends when you're running a tennis tournament, particularly if you run into problems when you're running that tournament. If you've started out with having a very open approach with families or your adult players, it will really help you if you do run into some problems. So in terms of communication, I would say you need to be prepared. You need to communicate early and you need to communicate often. You need to be consistent with your messaging. Don't tell one player one thing and then for the same exact scenario, tell them something else because those players talk to one another and then they're going to feel like one of them got the short end of the stick. I would say be a resource. When a family asks you a question that could be answered yes or no, answer yes or no. But if you have a moment, try and provide them a little background about why the answer is yes or no. The USTA regulations, the tournament regulations are a great resource for that. And what you do is you help educate your player and their family so that perhaps they won't be asking that question again. And lastly, I say be level blind. And this is whether or not you're running a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or red, orange, and green, or you're talking about the level of the individual player, meaning the number one seed versus the player that you know is the weakest one in the tournament, probably shouldn't even have entered because it's too strong of a field for them. What I mean by this is treat every single person the same. Show no favorites. I know a lot of you have some of your students who are playing the tournaments that you run. Be very mindful of that. Obviously, you know them well. You're going to be easier. It's going to be easier to communicate with them and be really familiar with them. But try and show that same courtesy and openness and kindness and friendliness to every single player. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Collaboration with your referee. I like to think of my referee as my doubles partner. They're not just the person I hire and they're going to come in and be there for 2 days and then they're going to leave. You really need to have a partnership with that person. You need to understand, I would say, their quirks, the things that they expect of you, and what you expect of them. And it's really important to have this open dialogue. The first thing I would say, you are not the only one in charge. And most importantly, there are a host of things that you are not in charge of at all. For example, disciplinary things that are happening on the tennis court. That is not your purview. That is the referee's purview. I would say the one exception to that is if you're running a level 7 and you're in that dual role. That's a very complicated, it's kind of sticky wicket thing. There is training for you to become good at that, but that is an example of something that you are not in charge of. Technically, the referee is in charge of the draws and the scheduling. If they feel very strongly about something, you really need to go take their lead on it because they are the one who is experienced and who will not lead you astray. The reality is the USTA regulations make the responsibility for those things the referee's responsibility, and the buck stops with them. Same with assessing code violations, which are disciplinary, obviously, but also that follow-up with respect to assessing suspension points. If the referee says the kid's going to get suspension points, you as the tournament director do not have the right to say, no, they are not. Even if they're your student, I know it sometimes creates a bit of a strange situation, but it's very important that you consistently enforce all of the rules at a tournament, from player to player to player and from tournament to tournament. And working in collaboration with your referee will help you do that a whole lot better. When you're going into a tournament, and I know some of you run a lot of tournaments, you've been working with the same referee forever, you're probably doing these things already. So I'm speaking maybe primarily to some of the tournaments that are newer on the block, tournaments that maybe have hired a new referee and you're just starting that relationship with them. Really have a game plan when you talk with your referee, right? You should be talking with your referee before entries open. You need to know who is responsible for hiring the other officials. Some referees want to do that themselves. After all, they report to that referee and they need to be comfortable with who's being hired. Other referees are going to charge you to do that work and you would like to take it on yourself. That's fine, but make sure that you and your referee have an understanding. I mentioned the scheduling and the draws again, make sure you're collaborating with your referee who's going to have the primary responsibility for that. As a tournament director, most of us push that button to do the draws, but the referee does need to review them and needs to have access to those draws to review. Who's going to be responsible for handling withdrawals and following up and making sure we get medical notes or personal circumstance explanations? Have that, have a checklist. What's your inclement weather plan? If you see that there is bad weather on the horizon, have that conversation about what the appropriate shortened match format should be, so you aren't having that debate, right? Late on a Friday night before your tournament's going to start on Saturday. Report time for officials crew. Make sure that's understood. Do they need to be there 30 minutes early or an hour? Emergency response plan. A lot of folks don't know that this is a requirement. At the very back of Friend at Court, it's part 4. Sets forth all of the various things that you need to have in place in case there is a health or other emergency. It's primarily health related emergencies that happen at your tournament. Talk about sportsmanship initiatives. Are there some things that you would like to try, like a handshake challenge, for example? Happy to explain what that is if you put it in the chat if people don't. But it's a really good way to help break down those barriers between players that don't know each other yet. And then who's going to be responsible for recording code violations? For me, this is pretty much my checklist. Tommy, back up. I go through before, especially when I'm working with a brand new referee. This is the kind of thing I want to have to go over in my first meeting with that person. And honestly, have this conversation before you even hire them, if you have that luxury. You want to know what their point of view is with respect to a lot of things. And maybe that a referee might not be your cup of tea and you want to try and find somebody else. Please use your referee as a resource. You run a lot of tournaments, right? You're really familiar with your site, your courts, your parking, your practice courts, all of that stuff, right? But your referee is usually doing serving as a referee at a lot of different venues, right? They have seen a myriad of different things and might have some really good suggestions for you to improve upon what it is that you're doing. And lastly, I would say this is something that people forget to do. Don't forget about officials' hospitality. There is the expectation that the tournament will be providing lunch to the officials. And if you go late, meaning after, I'd say, Vinod, shake your head, about 6:30 or 7, you need to be providing dinner for those folks as well. Please keep that in mind because you will get very disgruntled officials working if you have not provided them with that hospitality. All right, next slide. Tournament website. So first of all, I will say that a website with particular information is a requirement of the USTA regulations. It is not optional. Nothing frustrates me more when I'm going through looking at some tournaments, right? I've got some family calls me, they're asking me about a tournament. I open up a web page and there's pretty much nothing on that homepage. I would say that is a huge miss. This is your first opportunity to communicate to your prospective customer. Let them know what is expected of them. Let them know what's going to happen at the tournament, right? When you're going to make the draws, where your parking is. You know hopefully you know a lot of those things, and they're listed in Friend at Court. We have some additional things we would like you to put in there that are listed in our regulations as well. We have written templates for I know we have them for the junior tournaments. I'm not sure, Joanna, if you've written them for the adults as well, but we do have tournaments by tournament type and tournament level that you can use as a resource. It's a cut and a paste, and then you could customize it to the various things that are happening at your tournament. I would highly recommend you use this. And it gives you a really good idea of how comprehensive a website should be. And then I would say before you before entries open, be sure you have your referee take a look at that website. Because if they've got a keen eye and they will let you know if there's anything inaccurate. Vinod has been a great resource for me on that one. He was my referee for a level 2 last year, and he was such a detail guy and he caught some mistakes. So it was really great to have him review that in advance. 2 more things. All of the information for your website must be ready by the date entries open. Okay. Not a week before the tournament, the date entries open, because this is to your customers a statement of what it is that they are purchasing. And lastly, despite the fact that this is a requirement, I would say this is the number one, cover your fanny when you're running a tennis tournament. We all know that parents don't read, or adults don't read everything that you post, right? But if you have posted some information that is critical and it is something that they do not like and they let you know that, you can tell them, you can cut and paste from your website and say, I'm sorry that this was missed before you entered. It's very important that you read the website before you entered, but here's the information that we provided that was posted at the time you entered the tournament, and that's on them. I missed the second bullet on the slide, and I do want to say, look, the reality is we might not know the answers or all the information at the time entries open, or there might be a few mistakes on your website. We're all human. We make those mistakes. Sometimes we get a late start on something. If you have a really substantive change to your website, during that, when entries are open, pull that list off the website. You've got the email addresses, send an email or do it through the texting system or the email communication system and let them know. Say, hey, we have an update. We want to make sure you understand this. If you don't agree with it, please be sure to withdraw yourself before the entry deadline. That way you fully communicated with the families. Next slide. Just want to talk a little bit about direct communication with players and a few things to consider when you're emailing and you're texting them. Number one thing, and this is really with juniors, or in an adult open tournament, be mindful of the fact that you are going to have junior players in that tournament as well. So I would just be safe and do this for every single tournament. Whether it's texting or it's emailing, always CC another Safe Play approved person. And do not assume that it is the parent that is texting you. Very often, especially when the kids hit about 15, they are texting you directly. And sometimes you do not know if you are having a one-on-one communication with a minor. That is not allowed and can get you into a lot of hot water. If you're communicating through the serve tennis or the tournament desk system, either the texting or email system, a copy is automatically being sent to the USTA Safe Play office. So you're covered there. But if you do any communication outside of that, be sure that you have, I always have it be my referee. I just CC my referee on everything. I make it a practice, and this should be a standard. And I actually think 24 hours is way too long, but email, text, and phone messages, reply to those within 24 hours. I would say within 8 hours. People are gonna be really happy with you if you can communicate that quickly. But absolutely do not wait more than a day to answer one of these communications. I want to share with you my thoughts on using the serve tennis and the tournament desk communications versus direct emailing or texting. I use a combination of this. And the reason I use a combination of it is because, as you know, if you communicate through the USTA online platform, a player cannot directly reply to you. And so if you have the kind of communication where you want people to reply, I do it directly. So for example, entries closed for a tournament. I immediately send an email through the system saying, thank you for entering. We're going to be selecting players after 12 noon on Friday. If you need to withdraw before then, you can do it without penalty. Here's a link to the waiver if you haven't sent it. And I just shoot that off the minute entries close. That way you're going to get some people who are going to look at the list. They might pull themselves out before you run selection. It makes everything much cleaner. As a practice, we don't run selection on my tournaments until noon on Friday because that is the date, at least in juniors, after which you do not have to refund anybody an entry fee. But if I'm in the middle of the tournament and opponent has withdrawn, I will text them directly and I will CC my referee on that because I want them to confirm as quickly as possible that they have received my message. Next one really is a best practice. And I don't do it in all the tournaments I run. I primarily do it in the high level tournaments that have like an actual registration. But when you talk to the players, if you know that or you are concerned that you do not have an updated phone number, get that updated phone number and you can enter it in Tournament Desk. If folks don't know how to do that, if you go into the participant list and you click on a player's name, it opens up a sidebar. If you scroll to the bottom, you can add an email or a phone number. And you do that, and that is just for this tournament. They would need to go in and update their membership for those numbers and email addresses to be added. But if they did that on the spot, my understanding is that an in-progress tournament does not pick up that information. I'm going to jump a bullet here, and this is something that I've started doing in the last year. Add your own phone number to a top seed in the tournament. All right. And that way you will receive a copy of all of the text message communications that you send throughout the system. That is very helpful. It was also extremely helpful to me when I was running a tournament this summer and the text system went down. I was able to realize that it wasn't working and I switched to posting everything on the tournament website. Two more things. I frequently use the texting system from the scheduling tab or the matches tab to announce delayed match times. It avoids having to communicate with people separately. And then lastly, when you are sending weather alerts via the text messaging system, be sure to also post them on the website. I mentioned before, sometimes people's phone numbers are out of date, or in the case of a junior player, they're here with mom, but it's dad's phone number that's in the system. If you do that, at least the players have access to all the same information. Next slide. Email templates. I mentioned a minute ago, the NorCal has written a whole lot of website templates. I have over the years created a set of email templates that I use at every single tournament. And my advice to you is do not reinvent the wheel. From the first time I ran a tennis tournament, I wrote an email saying, congratulations for being accepted to the tournament. Here's some important information. From that day forward, I've taken those emails and those templates, right, and copied and revised them for every single tournament that I have run. That way you have very easily a pre-written email that says exactly what you want it to say. And when you grab that text and you throw it in a text message or an email, you know that when you're answering 5 different emails, you are saying the exact same thing to every single player. And that way you have this consistent and thorough response. In the little graphic there, I have a list of the templates I use for almost every single tournament that I run. And like I said, it makes life so much easier. I mean, the idea to reply to someone who's withdrawing, I just open that up, grab it, cut and paste, add their name, and hit send. And I don't even have to worry about whether or not I told them what the deadline was for providing that medical verification, for example. And in your email templates too, I would say, especially the ones, where you're congratulating someone on being accepted into the tournament, highlight the things that make your tournament special, right? If you're going to have, I don't know, coffee for the parents, if you are going to, I don't know, I help Phil Cello run a lot of tournaments. He's got a snow cone machine he pulls out in the middle of summer. Include that. Anything that makes your tournament unique, but also things that are really going to help the people when they come. Are there special parking instructions? Do you have some weird situation with practice courts, right? Is there educational information that might be helpful? Especially if you're running summer tournaments where it's really, really hot. There's great information if you Google it on the USTA website about hydration, because players, should be hydrating not 2 days before your tournament, but 2 weeks before your tournament. So help educate the players and use those emails to do that. It will also, like I said, build confidence in your customer in the product that you're providing. Next one. I think the next one's the last. Yeah. Mid-tournament communication. Draw sheets. I am a huge proponent of having a physical draw sheet on site. It's kind of a gathering place, right? It's a good place to take pictures in front of once you've got your champions. So post them somewhere where everybody can see and also keep them updated. I know that's a pain sometimes when it's getting crazy at the tournament desk, but do your best. And the online draw sheets, I got to say, I don't quite understand why people can't keep them up to date within about 30 minutes of matches coming off. It should be a real goal that you keep that up to date. I would consider using the publishing order of play and putting matches on court. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with that functionality, but from nod your head, Vinod, scheduling tab, right? From the scheduling tab, there is a button that says publish order of play. And if on that page, there's at the top, it says court 1, court 2, court 3. You can put those matches on court, and then it shows people on their phones what court the match is on. It cuts down on the number of questions that you've got going at your tournament desk, and will improve your communication with your customer. I've mentioned it before, use that serve tennis communication system, the texting and the email, especially the texting system. If you've got weather delays, you've got to delay a match because someone's opponent had a really long match and now it's delayed for 30 minutes. It's a really good way to do that. Always have walkie-talkies. It makes the communication between you and your officials on court very, very efficient. You will know the moment the last ball has been struck, and you can take that before those kids come back to the tournament desk. You have another match headed out to take that court. I have a picture here on the right of a restaurant pager system. This was the best $150 I think I've spent in the last 10 years. I got it on Amazon. And what I do is when a player checks in, I hand them a pager. I write the little number of the pager next to their name. It has eliminated the need for me to yell players' names at the tournament desk. It saves your voice. And it keeps it much quieter because typically a tournament desk is really close to one of your courts. So it's a really good system to use. And then I mentioned it before, mid-tournament emails and texts. Be sure you're efficiently use those things. If you're a person like me who's got a Mac, and I'm not a PC person, so I don't know if it has functionality, but you can text from your laptop. I use that functionality all the time, and I'm able to grab text and cut and paste. So be sure to do that. I think that was my last slide, Tommy. Yes?
Yeah. Andrea, we have a question.
Oh, sure.
I'm going to read it out loud for you. Says, Andrea, can you speak on how to handle weather delays and clear ways to post on homepage? For example, add 3 hours to all your matches time, etc.
Okay, so I had to do that this weekend. We it was a horrible situation. At 7 a.m., the courts were dry, ready to play. At right at 8:30, when the first ball was about to be struck, a huge mist settled down and made the courts unplayable for 3 hours. So the first thing I did is I texted to every player that there has been a minimum of what we decided with the referee at the time. I believe it was a minimum of an hour and a half delay. And I went into the system. If you click all of the matches from the schedule tab, it brings up a window that says adjust, I think it says adjust schedule times. You can move the matches by an hour and a half, by 15 minutes, by whatever it is. And there is also a button on that window that says send text message. So even though you have matches starting anywhere between 8:30 and noon, every player with a start time will get a text message that says your match is now at 10 a.m. if it was an 8:30, or if it was at noon, it will say your match is at 1:30. Great system. Will I be sharing my email templates? Phil, at the end, my email address is right there. Will you reach out to me, Phil? I would be happy to share them with you. So what I do is after that text, the next thing I do is I go back to Tournament Desk and I put a note on the top of the web page. All of you know that have used these systems, the text messaging system, you're limited to characters. So I use as many abbreviations as possible, but I actually write a paragraph on the website. I don't do it verbatim, so it looks a little bit neater, right, when it goes on the web page. We delayed an hour and a half, then we had to delay an additional hour, and we delayed matches one more hour. And after 30 minutes, they made a determination that it would be a total of 3.5 hours. At which point, I texted every player and said, "This is our delay. We're going to start matches at now what it was, 12 or something, and we are going to be rescheduling the day because we changed the match format." So then I made the start times not visible, and I rescheduled. And I knew that not all of our 12 courts would be ready at that start time. So I started on 8 courts. And starting on 8 courts instead of 12, plus having the advantage of reducing the backdraw match format, I just rescheduled the back of the day. Once I got it done, I republished the start times and sent everyone a text that said, "Hey, everything is up. Please check your draw for your new start time." Any questions about that process I just went through? I would say it's a lot of work. And the advantage that we have, like I mentioned, I work with Phil Sello on the tournaments that are at Solano Community College. Phil has extra hands available. I usually work the tournament from my home, so I'm handling the communication piece and rescheduling. So I'm kind of like in a cone of silence here, and he has really able people running his tournament desk on site. If I was on site running the tournament desk, answering questions and trying to reschedule, I would be going crazy. And then Phil, he's out there trying to get the courts dry. So we have enough people in play to do what I described. So if you're going into a tournament, let's say you've got some tournaments in January, February that are historically bad weather, think about getting a couple volunteers to help you so that as tournament director, if you need to be pulled to do some rescheduling work, you can do it without being inundated with questions. You can let your volunteers or your desk staff handle that, and then you can let your officials work on getting the courts dry. Anybody else? And again, my email and my phone number is there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'm also the chair of junior council. If you have any concerns about any of the policies we have, I did see a question a little earlier that didn't get answered about the administrative fees for when we cancel tournaments. Please feel free to reach out to me and describe your concern a little bit more, and we can talk about it.
Andrea, is it 480 or 408, your area code?
Oh, sorry about that. 408.
That
Thank
was
you, Vinod.
Beth's comment in the
Oh,
Q&A.
sorry about that. Oh, dang. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Good catch.
All right. So what a great set of things you gave us, Andrea. It's really wonderful for me to hear as well as a referee. So let me just introduce myself before I get into some of the tournament scheduling. I'm Vinod Herur, and I'm in charge of officials and sportsmanship at USTA NorCal. I'm also a certified official, and I do referee quite a few tournaments, including the KPSF 50K tournament that's run in San Francisco. And I do help a lot of the tournament directors with their draws and scheduling. So I'm here today to talk about some tournament scheduling. And since we have Andrea online as well, I would be happy if she jumped in at any time to give further suggestions to what I'm going to tell you as well. So with that, let's go on to the next slide. So before we get to the actual scheduling, there's a lot of things that need to be done. So let me talk a little bit about some of those things. First of all, selections. Now, Andrea mentioned that you should be working with your referees quite closely. The way the system is set up, actually, if you just follow the way the permissions are given, the referee doesn't get to see any of the selections or doesn't get to do the selections until tournament desk is launched. That's when they typically get access to the tournament. So there is a way to set it up so that the referee has access prior to that. And if you want to do that with your referee, I can certainly tell you how to do that. But in a lot of cases, the referee, even if they've accepted it, doesn't get access to it until the selections are done. So the key thing about selections is that you have to know what the criteria are for the selection. So every tournament seems to have slightly different criteria. So make sure you're very aware of what it is, using national standings list, using WTN, using first come, first serve. So there are a bunch of different criteria that are used for making the selection. Second, combining events. Say in one of your events, you do not have enough people. There are ways to work with that in terms of trying to combine events. Now, if you actually have some events that are low on registration, say you have 2 people in one and you have 4 in the other, and you want to find out if those 2 will be willing to play up in the other division that has 4 or 6 people already in it. One way to be able to accept it, to at least get through this phase to launch the tournament desk, is to accept them as alternates and then send them a communication saying that I'm accepting you as alternates. And if you are willing to play up, then we can move you into the other division. So that's one way of actually being able to get to the next step, which is to complete all the selections so you can get tournament desk launched. Once the selections are done, one of the things that I recommend everyone do is to publish the selections. Now, publishing the selections will then change what is on the external site, on the tournament site, and it'll go from an entrance list to an acceptance list. So, and it'll then break it down by each division or each category that you have in your tournament. It also lists the alternates in order. So you don't have people who have been notified that they're alternates asking you where they are in the alternate position, alternate list, because it'll actually show on the site. So I think that's a very key thing to do, to remember to publish the selections once you complete the selection. And then there are actually timelines. In table 2 of the junior regulation, there are actually timelines about when selections should be completed and published. And as Andrea mentioned already, she said she doesn't do it till Friday noon of the tournament after selections, after entries close on Wednesday. So each level has a different time for the selections. So you should look at it and make sure that you comply with when the selections are supposed to be made. All right, so once selections are made, then you can launch tournament desk, and that's typically when the referee gets access to the system as well. And from this point on, you can work with the referee on doing some of these things. One of the first things that need to be done is to seed your players that have been accepted. Again, I think understanding the criteria for seeding is key to making the correct seed. Um, I put NSL purposely on both sides. You know, under selection, I said NSL. Now, in that case, it stands for National Standings List. In junior tournaments, under seeding, you'll actually use a different list. It's called the National Seeding List. So there is a slight difference between the two. So you have to make sure that when you go into the accepted players, you again refresh the seeding criteria and use the national seeding list if that is what is intended to be used for seeding. Other tournaments might use WTN for seeding, and some might use a combination of the two. And that sometimes does get a little tricky. And this is where I think you should work with your referee, because in some tournaments, you have half your seeds by national standings list, and the other half could be by WTN. But if they are, they have to meet certain criteria to be used. So all of these things need to be factored in. And then there's all factors. If you're using all factors seeding, which is used in some of the adult tournaments, you have to send this to the seeding committee, and they will respond with the seeds. So typically, it's good to give them the list of all your acceptances as soon as entries close, so that they know who they're working with and who needs to be seeded. Okay, so and the update the list just means that, you know, when you are seeding, make sure you update if it's done by the national standings list, as it is in some adult tournaments. Make sure you update it, even though you selected by the same criteria. And for the juniors, definitely make sure that you're using the seeding list. And if it's doubles, it's slightly different. So make sure you're using the doubles list if you're seeding doubles. Some tournaments, if you have 32 players accepted into the draw, they have group seeding. So make sure that you understand group seeding. And typically what happens is seeds 1 through 4 are seeded numerically, and then 5 through 8, sorry, are seeded as a group seed. So they're all given the number 5. So make sure that when you do the seeding, you adhere to what the regulations say. And then publish the seeding. And it's very important to publish the seedings, because once you publish it, it's visible on the external site. And if somebody spots a mistake, there's a chance to correct the seeding before you make the draws, right? Then we talk about avoidances. Avoidances, typically before making the draw, we try to set up some things that make sure that, for instance, doubles teammates don't face each other in the first round, or siblings, more importantly, siblings, a lot of twins playing in the same event. You don't want them facing each other in the first round. So make sure you look through that and and set up those avoidances. And have some kind of a policy if people are asking you for avoidances. So sometimes you might get approached saying, I don't want to play this player because we're in the same club, we play together on all the teams, we play each other all the time. So have a policy for whether you're going to accept those or not. And then finally, you're ready to make the draws. At this point, you have to be very familiar with, again, the draw formats. What are the formats that are allowed? And then whether you can split the draw. In case you have certain number of entries and you have the number of courts available to actually host more, or some of your other divisions don't get enough entries, you might be able to expand the draws. Make sure you understand whether you can expand the draws or not. Yeah. So that's key. Also, the draw format is very important to understand. There are various different formats. For example, a modified feed-in championship on the consolation side is not the same as a feed-in championship through the quarterfinals. So if you mistake one for the other and do the wrong one, you'll end up with draws that are not right. And then you have people playing it and then complaining about not getting the right ranking points because they didn't get one of the things. I'm guilty of doing that myself because we had a first match loser consolation, and I didn't realize that you had to make the third place playoffs even on an 8 draw. So a draw with just 8 people, so 8 players. So make sure you pay attention to that. And then playoff matches. You have to generate playoff matches. We had a case where it was a double sectional level 3, and it was boys 16, girls 16, boys 18, girls 18s. And all of them, except the boys 16s, were 16 draws, compass draws. And the regulations say you can have up to 32. Now, none of the others actually filled up to 32, but the boys 16 did. But when the draws were generated, on the boys 16, on the 16 draw compass draws, you don't have to generate the playoff matches because it gets generated automatically. But on a 32 draw, you have to do that. So these are kinds of things that you have to remember on making the draws itself. Again, consolation formats may be different, so updating the draws so that the consolation formats show what the actual matches, what they will be played. If they're short set, that it'll show that they are actually playing short sets. Now, I like to set the public draw settings. I like to associate the city and state with the players, and also their WTN, just because I'm hoping that WTN will be something that a lot of people use. But I like to do that. I see a lot don't do it, but it's preference. So you can or do it or not. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, so now we're actually getting into the scheduling. So you've done all of these things, you've made the draws, and now we're ready to start scheduling. There are 2 resources that I think are key to actually doing a good schedule for your match. And these are the schedule and court requirements, especially for junior tournaments that NorCal publishes, and it's on the tournament director page. This is something that I use all the time when I look at it because it's so fundamentally good. You have everything laid out. It tells you everything you need to know. And then the second thing are the Garmin scheduling tables. If we could just go to the next slide, I'll talk about those 2 particular things. Okay, on the left is one of the tables, an example of what it is in the tournament director page. And this is for a level 4 excellence tournament. And it's a 4-day tournament. It's conducted over 2 weekends. So it's Friday, Saturday of one weekend and Friday, Saturday of the next weekend. And it includes both singles and doubles. And this one lays out all the ways that, all the things that you need to actually schedule your tournament. So if you have the required number of courts, and it says on the first day, if you look at the bottom, minimum court requirements for first weekend, if you're running 2 divisions, you need 11 courts. Now, if you do have 11 courts, then you can just take this as it is and schedule the matches as they are and use the Garmin time that's listed down. Again, if you look down, it says an hour and 37. And you go from 8 to 7. And it's all there for you. So you can just use this as it is. Now, where you would need to kind of play with it a bit is if you don't have exactly that many number of courts, or you have some gaps in your court availability, and you want to move some matches around. There are ways to kind of fine tune, or I wouldn't say fine tune, to modify this a little bit to get all the matches played with the number of courts you have and the number of hours that you have the courts for. So this is key. Now, the second table there is the Garmin system, and this one just shows one for 12 courts. And as you can see, there are different ways that different columns in the table, and each one of them shows different times. It says 1 hour 16, 1 hour 23, 1 hour 30. And basically, these are the average match times. Now, it's already mentioned in the court schedule requirements, you have 1 hour 37. So if you look at table 4, it says 1 hour 37. And even if you're doing scheduling manually, you can use this table to know that of your 12 courts, you can start off with 12 at 8 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock, you can put 4 more matches on. At 9:30, you can add 3 more matches. And believe me, this actually is based on a statistical approach that has been fine-tuned over the years, and it works really, really well. And it prevents some, as opposed to block scheduling, it prevents, once you get your first matches out, there are fewer people coming to your desk every time to report for your next matches. So you have 4 matches instead of another 12 coming on in 2 hours. Okay, can we go back? And I have the links down in that slide. So when we share these slides with you, it'll take you to those. The other kinds of things to know about scheduling is number of the courts needed by day. And again, that table shows you what you should have ideally, and the availability during the day. Of course, you know your facility the best, so you would know when you have your courts and whether there's any gaps in the availability. The rounds by day, how many rounds you can play, is listed in that table. You might need to modify it if, again, you have less availability or you have some other factors that need to be taken into consideration. I mentioned the Garmin scheduling for the average match times. And special scheduling requests, this often, we get asked, can I have my match later, or can I play my matches at this time? And you may be able to accommodate some of them, you may not be. And again, as Andrea mentioned, I think it's good to communicate to them in a way that is very fair and equitable to all the players. So if you can, and it doesn't affect other players too much, you might consider accommodating their scheduling requests. But if you can't, then you just tell them that, we've got a full schedule, we've got this many matches. If we move this, then it'll affect these other matches. Just explain to them why you can't do it. And most of the times I've found that people are quite accepting of that. The other things to remember, maximum number of matches per day. I think table 8 and 9 are for the juniors and the adults respectively. And then the scheduling time limits for juniors. The NorCal regulations specify that if you're 12 or 14, then you can only schedule matches up to 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. on a school night. And for 16s and 18s, it can be scheduled as late as 8 p.m. But on school nights, even for them, it's only 6 p.m. So be aware of all these things before you start your scheduling. All right, next slide, please.
Hey, Vinod, can I say one thing?
Yes, go ahead.
So, I 100% agree with everything that Vinod said here, but I would say you should be thinking about this when you're applying for your tennis tournament, because you really do not want to be applying for a tournament that the number of courts you have can't handle. And if you really start thinking about that, you look at the Garmin table, right? And you say, okay, if I have 12s to 18s and I'm running a level 5 and my draws are 16, this is how many matches I'm going to run in a day. How many courts do I have? It'll tell you whether or not you can do that. And so maybe you don't apply for all 8 divisions. Maybe you apply for 4 divisions or 6 divisions. But this is something you need to be thinking about well in advance. Once you've run a whole lot of tournaments, then you kind of have an understanding of your tournament and what you're applying for. But really, when you're getting started, I would highly recommend you think this through as you're looking at what you want to be running and applying for.
Great
Because I
comment.
can tell you the sanction committee does have a chart, and we look at what's being applied for, and we know that a lot of people are applying for things that they can't actually do.
Mhm. Yeah, what I found is that in some of the adult tournaments, especially the NTRP tournaments, that there are a lot of divisions that do not fill.
Mhm.
And I see that in those cases, I mean, if you assume that all the divisions are going to be filled, you'll need a massive facility. But it's quite typical that not all of them do fill. So you can run it with fewer courts than what would be required if you had all your draws full.
Yeah, I mentioned the sanction committee. The staff is really knowledgeable when we're looking at a tournament and we see all these divisions get applied for. Well, Joanna will say, "Oh no, don't worry about it because these divisions will not get 16 players. I'll probably get, I don't know, about 6 to 8 players, so they can actually handle it." On the junior side, we've built in flexibility for the staff to say, gosh, we got this many extra entries. We've been able to secure an additional site. Can we expand the size of our draws? And we can't do it in every single case, but we can do it in some cases. And so there is flexibility to expand the size of your draw. If you, for example, get more courts, or maybe say the girls 12s hardly get any entries, but the boys 14s gets gazillion. So you'll have a smaller draw for the girls, but you can have a larger draw for the boys. So if you have any questions about that, once you see your entry deadline, be sure to contact Tommy because he'll work with you on that.
And I'll just add that in adults we often do that as well. We limit the draws as much as we think we need to accommodate potentially having larger draws. But then the tournament director can also on the tournament page say that they reserve the right to expand the draw limits if they have the court availability, and then we do that for them as well. And when some divisions have more than the draw limit and some divisions barely fill.
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys for those comments. All right. So now we're getting into, there's two different types of scheduling, and well, I shouldn't say two different approaches. And Tournament Desk actually supports something called auto scheduling. Now, I have found that if you have, a set number of courts and you don't have any variations in the kind of availability of those courts, that auto scheduling can work quite well. So the things to do for auto scheduling: first, you set up the facilities. So you list the facility name, you add the number of courts that you have, and you add the days and times that are available. And then you look at the match parameters. So average match time. And again, if it's junior tournaments, you can consult the schedule and requirements to see what it is. And I've always found that putting those times in seems to work very well. So put those times in. Now, in Tournament Desk, they do have some default times, and I would caution you that you look carefully at those before you schedule just using the default times. Because like I said, if you consult some of those the junior tournament scheduling requirements, you'll see that sometimes they vary. So make sure that you look at it and preferably use what is there rather than what the defaults are in Tournament Desk. And the rest period between matches, make sure you consider that as well. In Friend at Court, for example, there's actually, I should say, in Tournament Desk for doubles matches, most of the time it says 30-minute between matches. Now, that's true only in doubles only tournaments. And in a lot of the other cases, even if it's a doubles match, it does require a 60-minute at least rest period between matches. So just make sure that you look through all of them and adjust them as needed before you try to run this auto scheduling. And then again, remember that there's something called the recovery rule. So if it's a best of 3 format followed by another best of 3 match, so you're playing 2 rounds of a best of 3 format match, then there's a recovery rule that says the referee has to offer 2 hours of rest between the matches. In that case, think about just putting that in. So if you're scheduling matches, if there's a match at 12 o'clock, maybe the next match should only be scheduled at 4 o'clock. So typically within 2 hours, the match would finish. And then you have that built-in time, so you don't really need to change anything. So think about that. And then think about also pay attention to the order that some of these divisions will be played. In juniors, our NorCal regulations say that doubles should be played as early as possible during the tournament. In the adults, it actually says singles should be played first before any doubles matches are played. And definitely main draw matches take preference over consolation draw matches. So consider all of those things in this auto scheduling, because what happens is that it actually matters how you drag those divisions into the site. So you pull one in and you put it in. So give it all these considerations when you're doing it. And if you're using multiple sites, decide which divisions you want on each site. Because ideally, if you're playing multiple rounds in a day, it would be best if they're playing both rounds at the same location, not have to travel between locations, especially if it's juniors, then you have to have somebody probably drive them from one to the other and things like that. So try to see if you can keep them all in one place for successive rounds. And then, as I mentioned before,
yeah, I was to add a couple things, Vinod. Also, as I full confession, I do not use auto scheduling. I know he's going to talk about manual scheduling next, but I have some good friends who do. And the key here is setting up what you want to go first, right? And making sure you have all of the order of your divisions being played set up as exactly the way you want it. And as Vinod said, being sure you set those the rest between matches and the length match time. You set that all up the way you want it. A couple things to think about. If I'm running a tournament that's got boys 18s and girls 12s, which matches do you think are going to take the longest on round one? It's going to be the girls 12s because they're really slow. Do not start your day with girls 12s. Start it with a division that you know that they're going to be a little more quick to that tennis ball, right? So and maybe spatter some of them. Don't run, maybe start the girls 12s next with some boys 16s, right? So you're going to have some longer and shorter matches going on at the same time. Keep in mind that first round matches tend to be shorter matches than the semifinals. Those are the ones that may, split sets. And these are all about averages, right? But think about the fact that your average match time is probably going to be shorter in the round one or round two. And in semis and finals, it's going to be longer. So keep all of those things in mind. I always say scheduling is more of an art than it is a science. And you're going to make mistakes when you're scheduling your first tournaments. Learn from those mistakes. Write notes about where there was too many people at your tournament desk. Write notes about where you had a couple open matches, and you'll learn about what makes a better schedule as you get more experienced. Two other things to keep in mind, if at all possible. Two players that are going to play each other later in the day, ideally you want their match times to be the same, right? You don't want Vinod and I playing at 8 a.m. and Joanna and Tommy playing at 10 a.m. and then winners and losers of both matches play later in the day, because Vinod and I are going to get way more rest than they are, and then it's not fair. The other thing is you want to progress rounds equally by day, by division. You don't want one semi to be played on one day and then the next semi and the final to be played on the other, because once again, a player is not going to get equal amount of rest, and we're going to run into some trouble. And Vinod mentioned special scheduling requests. That would be the absolute one time where I would say, no way if it required me to advance one round ahead of another, because that's just not fair.
Yep. Great comments.
Oh, one more thing too. That's about rest. I know we all at the tournament desk, we say, okay, we'll see you in an hour. Well, the reality is the hour, that is a minimum rest. And it is our responsibility to take care of the health and the well-being of the player. So if this player maybe is on their third match of the day, even if their matches were 2 sets earlier in the day, don't tell them I'll see you in an hour. Give them a little extra time. It probably won't ruin your schedule and it'll create a lot of goodwill and you'll be taking care of the health of that player. Because if they win, they're probably playing the next morning, right? And that's a lot of tennis on a little body. So,
Yep. All good points. Great points. Thank you, Andrea. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and then just a few other things about the auto scheduling. Make sure, like I said, you do have to drag those matches into that auto scheduler so it can schedule it. So make sure you stay within the maximum matches per day requirement. So you don't want to schedule too many rounds in each day. And then there's a 12-hour overnight rule requirement for our juniors. So if you have some divisions playing late one day, make sure that they don't start off the next day, with the first matches of the next day. Move them out later into the day. Use the match conflict report. There is a report that you can run and you can check to see if there are any matches that are too close, scheduled too close, uh, or like Andrea said, maybe later in the day, they've already played 2 rounds, even though it's within the permitted rest period. Maybe give them a little bit more time. And then, as Andrea mentioned, check the draws. So each section of the draw should have similar rest times. So if you, like she said, if you have 2 people playing and they're going to play later, the winners of those matches are going to play later in the day. Make sure that those earlier matches are about the similar time, within half an hour of each other, so that they get an equal amount of rest before they play the next round. And then finally, if you're using auto scheduling, click on the unscheduled matches. There's a tab that says unscheduled matches. So you run your auto schedule and you think, oh, all the matches are scheduled. And it kind of, what I call, fails silently, which means it doesn't alert you that some matches didn't get scheduled. So you have to consciously go and look on the unscheduled matches tab to see if there are any there. If there are no matches there, then that you're good. If there are, then you have to go and take a look again at your auto scheduling because it basically says it couldn't schedule them given the parameters that you gave it, all the rest periods and the match length. So then you have to figure out what you need to do. Okay, so make sure you check that because that can catch you otherwise. All right, next one, Andrea. I know we're running kind of out of time now, but then let's manual scheduling. So I found that manual scheduling is actually useful if the auto scheduling, especially if there are gaps in court availability. I find that the auto scheduling sometimes doesn't do a very good job. And I've had places where there's actually a big gap, meaning I have 6 courts from 8 to 10, and then don't have the courts at all from 10 to 12. And I try to auto schedule, and it only schedules matches for that first 8 to 10 period and completely seems to ignore the rest of it. It doesn't realize that I have the courts again at 12 o'clock and doesn't seem to do a good job of scheduling. So if you have situations with your court availability like that, then there may be a reason to use manual scheduling. The way I do it, I actually lay out the courts on a grid, and then I actually list all the matches that need to go on those courts, and then I set the table, the garment table next to it, and then I pull those matches into those grids. So that's the way I do it. I color code the matches, and this is something actually I learned from Andrea. Color code the matches so that you know the successive rounds, when you can schedule them, you can put them on, you can put them in places. So you have blue, you know that the players in those blue matches will be playing again later, and you code it blue so you make sure there's enough time between those matches. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is when you get to the final days of the tournament, if you have like a 4-day tournament over 2 weekends, and you get to the final 2 days, you can actually do block scheduling, which is basically because you don't have that many matches anymore. You could just say, okay, the first matches will be at 9, and then the next matches will be at 12:30 or 1 o'clock, so that they have enough time to complete the matches, and then have the next round of matches. So that's very quickly on manual scheduling. And as Andrea mentioned, I think manual scheduling is more of an art than fiddling with the trying to tune the parameters of the auto scheduling. system as well. So, but it's a very satisfying experience. It's like putting a puzzle together. And then finally, you publish the draws, publish the schedule, and Andrea mentioned this as well, publish the order of play. All of this makes it so that the players and other people can actually see all the information on the tournament site. One key thing I would say, download the match schedule as soon as you do publish it, download it so that you actually have a copy of it somewhere outside of it. So if you have to make changes and then for some reason or other, you have to go back and look at what it originally was, you do have a record of what those the original schedule was. Notify the players as soon as the draws and schedules have been published so that they know they can go and look. And then I say keep your fingers crossed that there are no weather-related issues. But this really is what Andrea was talking about. There is make contingency plans. Weather is one of the biggest things that upsets the schedule. So be aware of the weather forecast, make contingency plans, and then communicate. As she mentioned, communicate if there's any reason for delays. And then remember, if you're shortening formats, that it has to be done by round. So you can't have one round that started already playing a certain format. You can't change it mid-round to another format. So that round would have to be completed using the format that was played by some of the matches that were already played in that round. So that, I think, actually is the end of my spiel. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any, but other than that, that's what I have to offer you all.
Questions? All right, I think that is the end of our session for tonight. If you have any other questions, feel free to email, reach out to us, one of us, and we'll try our best to help you. Thank you all for taking your time to join us tonight. We look forward to working with you all in 2026. Thank you, everyone. Questions? All right, I think that is the end of our session for tonight. If you have any other questions, feel free to email, reach out to us, one of us, and we'll try our best to help you. Thank you all for taking your time to join us tonight. We look forward to working with you all.